Sweet berry wine.
Yeah, do that. We're doing member tasting of their wine portions on the 5th.
Are we live?
Yeah,
Are we
just
live?
hang for a bit.
The Romans invented one. That's not true. They invented them for parties, and parties are no fun if nobody wants to drink with you.
You can't go to parties, so.
There's no parties right now.
What? There's no parties right now.
All right now.
It's like a party here at Turnbull every
The
day.
Romans didn't think about the possibility of a pandemic when they created those parties.
Well, isn't wine antimicrobial?
That's right.
Oh.
Just like garlic, Romans just poured in the wounds.
It's like the cleaners you're supposed to drink.
Yes, don't drink bleach, drink wine. That should be on your tagline.
Or people drink, oh, that's right. Trump wanted people to drink bleach.
Don't drink bleach.
Wasn't there like a UV light and bleach moment? I think.
UV light.
I don't know.
He thought that you could like kill coronavirus with UV light
Well, technically.
internally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because those
Maybe we can get the lights somehow.
those lights
inside.
people were trying to buy,
Oh, I remember that.
the wands and
The
everything.
wands.
And bleach, you can just inject the bleach right in the jugular. Until I did it, and I'm fine.
Great.
I mean,
You don't seem fine.
I've got other issues, but mostly one of them is the virus.
Yes, we don't want that.
We had 5, now we're 4, now 3.
Oh, really? Are we losing people?
We're losing people. You think we're having issues?
I think they're like, this looks boring. Let's get out of this thing.
We're talking about, let's see, 401, let's see if we've got any no messages there.
I can fire it up online and stuff outside. You guys just chit chat for a minute.
Hanging out with CJ. What's going on?
Nothing,
Yeah?
just,
You've been killing it.
we've been busy.
That review on the 2018 Napa Valley Cabernet is coming on
Yes, Wine
from Wine
Spectator.
Spectator. They're
Pretty exciting.
What are they? It's in James.
James Molesworth.
And you said 92 points.
It's
Killer.
juicy and, what's the word?
Super good.
Super good. That's a product.
92 points for that wine is awesome.
And their Spectator is not an easy,
No,
those, you're lucky to get a 94. That's like,
I mean, I guess the only worry would be maybe the Napa Cab outscored this black label we're about to taste. Did it?
well.
Oh, wait. Close.
No.
Close.
Fire it up.
Fired up?
You're welcome.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Welcome back to our one-off special tasting on a Thursday afternoon.
We're hanging out here in the breezy private tasting room. Many of you recognize it, no doubt.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us.
We're here to taste the 17 Black Label.
Yeah, I'm sure all of you know exactly who Carrie and I are. Carrie and I are still here, and we're still making and talking about wine.
So Peter, what's changed since our last tasting was probably in July.
Yeah, so we harvest happened, or is happening. It's like
That's right.
full till. I think the peak was yesterday, which means the vintage looks good. There's been a ton of stuff that's happened. Obviously, the world keeps going around the sun, and it just seems like the crazy year that lots of stuff happens.
Yes.
So I can't even remember what happened 3 days ago, but there was a time right at the beginning of harvest where there were fires, like a good 10, 15 miles away, but they were substantial. I'm sure you guys all heard about them on the news or live close to them. I think they're everywhere. Fires are out. Thank you, first responders, firefighters, private firefighters, anybody that jumped on their bulldozer and got from a cloud out and smashed down a fire, flew a plane, dropped stuff on them. You saved us. We love it. Thank you. Thanks for doing the real work. We were busy growing grapes and making wine, an essential duty in these crazy times, making alcohol. I don't know, we haven't missed a beat all year. The whole vineyard crew and cellar crew, the back of the house, if you will, we've been working away, and the farming season was crazy. It had its twists and turns. I generally think that the vintages that have a lot of dynamic interest in the growing season tend to make the most interesting wines, and we've got that, which is cool. I kind of prefer the vintages that have lots of stuff going on because it keeps us it's working hard. And the easy vintages where it's like Goldilocks and just like everything's that perfect pot of porridge in the middle bed and all that stuff. They make good wines, but the wines like don't have as much personality because it was just too easy. So I think the 20 vintage so far is looking like awesome. I like Tom and Carrie. Tom's manning the computer back there if you guys have any questions. And Tom and Carrie would tell you that just like 10 days ago, I was pretty doom and gloom about the vintage with the potential for smoke taint. There was a lot of lingering smoke, and we know from the 2017 vintage where we had like 98% of our fruit picked before the devastating fires that affected Napa. The little bit of fruit that we picked after the fires was definitely smoke tainted, and we destroyed that one. As always, we would never bottle anything that we wouldn't have on our own holiday table as like the centerpiece wine. So we hold that strong. Our goal is to always bottle the best of the vintage. And I had a reasonable concern, I think, that, and there are other wineries that I'm sure you're hearing about that have decided to bypass the entire vintage. And that seemed like maybe what was going to happen with our red vintage because we didn't know. You can't taste the smoke taint in the grapes when they're sweet. Once the fermentations are done, it unlocks the smoke taint and it would be there. And it seems to not be there. So we've only at this point like pressed off Merlot and Syrah. We have some Malbec lots that are dry. But today, exciting news, the first couple of lots of Fortuna Cab.
Hey.
And right behind that is some Amenos Cab that they're almost dry. And I can't detect any smoke taint at all. So it's very exciting. I'm certain that the Amenos Cab is going to be glorious. It looks like an awesome year for Amenos. And so the front edge of what we're seeing looks completely fine. And so I'm beginning to suspect that there were wineries that were very close to the fire on the backside of Pritchard Hill in Childs Valley that were damaged, that had lands burned, vines were scorched. Obviously, those wines were damaged. And some of the properties on the Tabaha Mountain, Pritchard Hill, I think the Stagecoach, there's like credible evidence that people have smoke taint in those places. But it seems like we were just over the cusp with our Leopoldina vineyard. Seems lucky. And Menos and Fortuna and the Turnbull Home Ranch, like miracle. The silver line, all the bad root stuff that's happened in 2020 seems to have at least spared us this moment. So we'll take it. We could use a win this year, and in a couple of years when we release these wines, I think you'll get a win too. So
all in all, we're feeling good about it and optimistic, and we keep doing what we do.
Yeah, it's been a ride. We've been busy picking grapes and making wines, and the cellar team and vineyard team are exhausted. We've been going at full tilt for about 10, 15 days. We'll probably be done picking in about a week, which is early for us. We're about 10 days ahead of schedule.
That's great.
Which is kind of nice. It means that we should have our normal goal would be like have everything barreled down by Thanksgiving. And I think we'll make it this year. Some years we don't. And this year looks like we'll be relaxing on Thanksgiving Day, hopefully with family and friends, like you will be. And hopefully like a little bit socially spaced or outside or something. We got to figure all that stuff out. But I don't know, we'll be enjoying hopefully an awesome bottle of the 2017 Black Label.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a baby to open now, but it is pretty fantastic. So
do you want to get into it?
Should we?
I don't know. I mean,
hey, cheers to you guys.
cheers to everyone.
I guess like when Carrie was talking to me about like what the winemaker note should be for the release, the thought that comes to mind always is the humbleness that we have for you without people that enjoy our wines and support our farming and winemaking craft and the front of the house and the art of telling our story and that whole vibe of you joining us on our journey. Without you, we don't get to do any of that stuff, quite literally. So your hard-earned dollars that you send to us to get little gems that we send to you in a great trade and exchange, that literally funds what we get to do. So
cheers to you, members. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So when we win and we have the reviewer like Antonio Galoni saying, "Hey, this wine is special. In fact, it was the only 100-point wine that I'm aware of out of the entire 2017 vintage in California, in the United States, in the Napa Valley. So it's a rare duck. And a lot of people would say, well, like that wasn't a great vintage if you're standing alone. And I look at it like, well, that's like a harder mountain to climb when you do it alone, because it means that the vintage didn't hand it out willy-nilly. It meant that the precision farming, the effort in the cellar, your membership that gave us the dream of making these wines, putting that hard work in, having the resources because we knew that you'd be with us when the wine would come out, that allowed us to do this. And so thank you so much. That's you are an equal partner in making these wines. And so smart on you for being members and having access to the halo moments that happen in life. And this is one of them.
Yeah.
So cheers.
It's close to that.
Yeah. Hopefully, I guess I'm hopeful. There's not so many bottles out there. So although it was our normal production level, we make around 1,500 cases or so of this wine. And I'm totally focusing on the 2020 vintage. So I've forgotten what we did in 2017. But
Well, on this production,
yeah.
well, direct only got about 780 or something like that.
Okay. So
it's actually small.
yeah, so then this goes out to some fine, back when there were awesome restaurants, and they will be back hopefully, and top bottle shops. We made about 1,000 cases this one then. So Sean Crowley, our wholesale partners out there they get little glimmers of this wine, and we appreciate you guys out there taking this out, and that's a long haul of supporting those wines. I think the first vintage of Black Label that I've seen was in 1997, I think. So there's quite a lineage. I know that it's a wine that rises to the occasion. So
that's
the
special color that we do.
And so it's we're always trying to fuse the Black Label is a wine that is predominantly from our Leopoldina vineyard, which is up on the Oakville Bench, and it's a vineyard that's on this terraced hillside, 600 to 900 feet in elevation on the eastern side of the valley, and it gets afternoon sun, and it's a red volcanic clay and cobblestone and huge boulder vineyard. It has a commanding view of the entire valley, and there's this old joke in winemaking that the vines like the view. And when they like the view, they do a good job. And indeed, the vineyard's spectacular. So 45,000 acres in the Napa Valley, give or take a few. And that sounds massive, but it's about 1/8 the size of Bordeaux. But amongst that 45,000 acres, there's maybe 5,000 acres that are purely a spectacle of place and time, and you can't fake it. And this vineyard, actually, our Manos, Fortuna, and the Leopoldina vineyards are all in the pantheon of great vineyards in the Napa Valley. But this one's like undeniably so. Like you could even like hate the vineyard, and you'd still have to be like a great sports team that you root against. You'd have to still, like, if you were honest with yourself, you'd be like, yeah, they're a pretty good team. And this vineyard is like, it's that good that even like people that don't believe it are still like, wow, yeah, that's a special spot.
Special spot.
Yeah, and so the vineyard itself is cool. That creates the structure, texture, black fruit, density, power. I like to think of that the wines that come out of Leopoldina as kind of like Thor's hammer. They're always good. Like it's always handy.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah, right. And when Thor doesn't have his hammer,
He's not Thor.
He's not Thor. And so it's a really critical piece of it's really like it is our crowning pinnacle. And what makes the Leopoldina Cab, Piera, and Black Label possible is that vineyard. And also, as wines don't make it into those programs, they buttress and aid the Oakville Reserve and the Napa Valley Cabernet. So I don't know. It's like crushed stone and huckleberries and cassis, just like violets. The aromatics of the wine, for being such a young wine with so much power and tension, it is aromatically already available. which is exciting. Sometimes when you have a wine with this much going on, and this much stuffing, it can like kind of, it's like put a big cast iron lid on a heavy pot, and you can't access it. Yeah, but
And Peter, for people not as familiar with Black Label and kind of the history of Black Label, does it always come from the Leopoldina, or have other vineyards contributed?
yeah, no, it's so it's usually a blend of Leopoldina and the Fortuna Vineyard.
Okay.
It has I think my first vintage 2007 and 2008. It wasn't yet designated as Oakville, and those vintages, the bottling was designated Napa Valley, and they included a few barrels from our Manus Vineyard. In 2007, actually, the 3 best barrels that we had in the entire portfolio of barrels from the vintage were from the Manus Vineyard, and they were the buoying part of the 2007 Black Label, which at the time was the highest scoring wine that Trimble had ever made. So it was a nice way to start off.
Was it 97?
No, it was 94 points, which was like, and so the 2007 Black Label was a killer wine, still is, and it's actually now that it's got like 13 years on it. If you have a 2007 Black Label, that's one to crack into, because it's filled out all its corners and it's going for the gates. So that one's great. So in the first 2 vintages, I did employ fruit from our Manus Vineyard, which is in Calistoga, which is a separate AVA or American viticultural area from Oakville. Now that we labeled the bottle Oakville, we don't include fruit from the Manus. So sometimes we have great barrels in the Manus that literally can't go into the Black Label, which augment and joyfully lift up the Manus bottling. So the Manus bottling is a nice place to look for the Black Label of Calistoga. And the fruit from our Trimble home vineyard tends to be like more. The Cabernet tends to be more strawberries, like muddled strawberries, some like red and dark plums, and tend to be fruit forward and pleasant, but not a tool. We don't make a single vineyard from the home ranch, which is right across the street from the famous Tokalon, next door to Nicola Nichols' Stolmeyer Vineyard. I might be mispronouncing that. So other properties right nearby us make wines from the same terroir, the same soil strata, the same weather pattern, and charge actually more money than what we charge for Black Label. But so you're like onto some fantastic values too. But the home ranch doesn't tend to make it in a Black Label because it doesn't have the structure elements and the power that we're looking for Black Label.
So yeah, break that down. What are you looking for in Black Label when you're looking for those barrels?
I mean, I'm literally I'm tasting through every barrel every month. So the vintage for Trimble is about 800 red wine barrels, and it's not like I'm tasting 800 glasses of wine in one day. I'm like going barrel to barrel, and we might have a set of barrels that came from the same vineyard block. They were fermented in the same tank, and then when we threw around that tank, we laid it down in the barrels. There's 10 different barrels of different coopers and forests and the vintage of the barrel, and those all age on their own different journeys. So I'll taste through those, but I'm really like they're a group, so it's not like I have to consider every barrel every month. I'm more like looking at it as a snapshot. But eventually, I've made my notes about which blocks are likely to make Black Label that have this kind of, like, I kind of think of it as like the heart of darkness. There's a black cassis and violets that are important. The wine has to both be aromatically powerful and physically powerful in the palate, with dark succulent fruits that are floral aromatically. And so eventually we lay all the barrels down on the floor, I taste through all of them, and it's pretty apparent like which ones want to be a Black Label. And about 95% of those barrels were ones that every month I thought wanted to be a Black Label. And then we have an embarrassment of riches, so usually there's like twice as many barrels for Black Label that potentially could be a Black Label than what we need. And so I'll hold them down, I'll keep tasting through them over and over again, and like be like, that one's the lowest hang, that one's out, that one's out, that one's out, that one's okay, that one's definitely in. And by going through them successively, finding just the best of the best.
Okay. And if you could, 5 kind of year in, year out qualities of Black Label. 5 words.
5 words.
Said you wanted interesting questions.
Yeah, those are interesting. No, Carrie must have understood me. I said, if no one's asking any questions, I didn't say I wanted interesting questions. I said I wanted I said softballs, Carrie.
No, it's a hard ball.
Yeah, I was
It's a
like,
curveball.
wow, that's not.
So
5 words.
Describe your Black Label kind of essential
It's a
quality.
liquid. It's made from fruit.
Ooh, it's
Yeah.
any words.
Oh, in other words, fruit, liquid, Black Label, wine. Yeah,
I
perfect.
think you got it.
Yeah, no. It goes back to that inky saturation, the aromatic lift, so that when you smell this wine, aromatically it draws you in, right? Like really great wine. When you smell the wine, you want to experience it. You want to put it in your mouth. You want to savor it and taste it. And this wine does that.
When do you think it'll be at its best? What's your feeling for this vintage?
I usually like the third bottle the best. Like, it's like if you just hit them over and over again. By the time you get the third bottle, it's really good.
Say 10 years.
Yeah, in general, I think that that wines from the Napa Valley, red wines that have ripe opulence. So most red wines nowadays, anywhere on the planet, best like 5 to 10 years after the vintage date. So this is a 2017. So hypothetically, it would enter its drinking window in 2022 and drink well through 2027. That's of course considering that someone has proper storage. I mean, proper storage doesn't have to be like a 55-degree cage somewhere, but proper storage means that you're like keeping the wine less than like, certainly less than like 64 degrees or something, and keeping it stable and not like moving around the back of the truck or something. So if you're able to properly store wine, then that has a huge impact on how long a bottle will continue to deliver pleasure and be on top of its game. We use like fantastic corks. The wine itself that was sold in the bottles was fantastic. The vintage has the 2017 vintage, which although it was the year of the Napa fires, this was harvested before the fires. There's obviously no smoke tanks, perfect wine. But it also, another feature of that vintage was that there was a substantial Labor Day heat.
I remember that.
Where it was hot, like really hot over Labor Day. And the fruit was just like 80% of the way through verations. Verations where the skin softened, the berries change color from green to purple, skin tannins start to like ripen and round, sugars go up, acids go down, and in dehydration from that heat event, a lot of the berries are damaged. Since we do our own farming, our own vineyards, we have total control over that. And I think that's actually the magic that set Turnbull apart in 2017 is we are winemakers and we know that it's important to start with the best fruit, right? The best ingredients end up in a good result. So we were able to do the hard farming because both hands, the hand that farms and the hand that wine makes is the same hands. So we were able to go in and the clusters that were most damaged, we dropped those on the ground. They get composted in the soil. They created nutrients that yielded generously in the 2018 vintage. But it was a very small harvest because of that. But because of that heat event, it pushed the fruit faster through ripening, which wouldn't normally like be an ideal situation. But in the case of 2017, there were fires that we didn't know were on the horizon that were coming someday. And if it hadn't been for the Labor Day heat, it was a very cold spring. People had actually removed a lot of the leaf structure around the fruit to speed ripening before Labor Day weekend. We hadn't done that. I'm an old pragmatic farmer guy, so I'm like, ooh, that sounds dangerous. And we have warm sites that face afternoon sun, so it's usually our job is to try to put as many leaves between the fruit and the sun as possible. Other farmers had opened up their fruit to the sun, and then Labor Day heat came, and they lost the crop or turned it into raisins. And raisin wine doesn't taste very good. If you take a box of Sunmates, soak it up with some water, and then ferment it into wine, and it tastes like raisins. So this wine doesn't taste at all like raisins because it's not made from raisins. We protected the fruit through the Labor Day heat, and then after the heat came, the heat was like radiating heat. We were able to go in, drop the damaged clusters on the ground, and then later open the leaves up when it was safe to do so in later in the season. And that heat event like got us closer to ripeness, which made it so that we picked the fruit before the smoke came.
Yeah.
So we were almost done. We had like 6 tons of fruit left in the meadows that was smoked in that we destroyed. But there were other wineries that had more fruit still hanging and damaged more of their fruit. And it's a little bit like an investment portfolio. When you're making wine or like harvesting grapes, you want to have diversity. So like some of the fruit that you pick early has very different tones and structural elements than fruit that you pick late. And early and late might be only a few weeks apart in the same appellation, or even like a few days apart in the same vineyard. If depending on the clonal material, the rootstock, the orientation, there's a lot that obviously goes into it. But the freshness of early picking, those like raspberries, boysenberry notes, and late picking where you get like cassis and huckleberries and blue fruits, and more like dark plums and dark cherries. They're that freshness with the red fruits and the darkness with the dark fruits from the ripening is really different. And so if you didn't get your fruit all the way ripe and then you lost it to smoke, you take away this whole element of your composition later, and you just don't have any dark fruit. And so like it would be like organizing a symphony, but like, okay guys, actually no bassoons and we have no kettle drums for you. It's all piccolos and flutes. And then like the symphony would be really different. You'd have to like compose it differently because you wouldn't have some of the elements and voices that you'd want to like make a total composition. So the heat helped us get it all the way ripe. And so we have dark, rich tones because it was all the way ripe before the smoke came.
So it's showing nice in the wine.
Jennifer Willoughby was asking, did the heat waves this year affect the fruit?
Yeah, it was extremely hot over Labor Day again, maybe a sign of the times. And I actually, this heat in 2020 was even hotter than the heat in 2017. However, veraison was complete when this heat came. So 2017 was this colder year before the heat, and it would like taking fruit that had been like cold ripened, and then putting it in an oven. And it was like a very abrupt, sharp change from like 62 degrees to like 105. And that was very damaging in 2017, where this year was like a relatively warmer vintage already.
Yeah.
And the fruit was, and it was an earlier bud break. We had a slight amount of rain last winter. So the soils were drier and warmer in the spring. Bud break happened earlier. In general, it's been alternating like warm and cold, which has added intrigue and maintained acidity. But the warm days have been warm. And so the vines were like already like tuned up to warmth, and they were more, they were more ready for it. So we saw a lot less damage this year with the heat, and that was due to the maturity of the fruit when the heat came, and then I think the vines were kind of like tuned up for it, so that they'd already like figured out how to protect the fruit, and they created a canopy structure. And despite the lack of rainfall, we did have a good canopy growth, and the farming team did a fantastic job. The vineyards never looked more beautiful. It was so disappointing when the smoke came that we thought, wow, that's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
And then it's turned out to be fine. Miracle.
Yeah.
So, so I'd say the heat was less damaging this year. We do have some fruit that raisin from the heat, but it's just like when you're, if you're cooking in your house, what your tools are. I have a cast iron pot, and I have a saucepan, and I have a sharp fillet knife, and I have what you can do and what you can't do with your tools, and you can use those tools in various and clever ways to get the result you want. Even if the recipe calls for something that you don't have, you can improvise sometimes, right? If you have the precise tool, that's always nice. And so understanding what our farming is aimed towards our fruit stream at the winery. So I know exactly what our equipment can and cannot do, and I can tune when we pick the fruit to help our equipment do the best job that it can do. And so our destemmer that takes the berries off the stems, it does that through an oscillating fashion. It would be like holding the stem by it'd be like buying some table grapes, and if you held it by the stem and you whipped it, grapes are going to fly off that cluster, but not all of them. right? And if you whip it successfully, they don't all come off.
Yeah.
And that has to do with like the hormone ripening in when the berry releases from the bracus or the stem as a hormone function. And then if the berries aren't very heavy, because they're raisins, they don't come off either. So by not picking when we had soft raisins, like a cluster might have like no raisins on one side, and the side that was like got shattered by the sun, by the heat, could have raisined. And if we pick it when they're soft raisins, those will come off into our fruit stream, and then we'd make raisin wines. But if we wait until the raisins are hard raisins and they don't weigh anything, then in our fruit stream they just go off with the leaves and the stems, and they don't get in our tank.
Didn't know this.
Yeah.
Learning so much right now.
Yeah. So like that. That's it. Like if you know how to use your tools, you can use your tools to alleviate issues. And like our job is always to like bring wines to you that show vintage and time, but also to highlight the best aspects of vintage and time, right? So like just like if you had two kids and one was a great sports person and one was a bookworm, you might, or a musical attributes. You might encourage those traits by putting them in classes for that or giving them extra attention in those areas. And then you can probably talk to your friends about how your kid is like, scored the winning goal or like has a piano, recital coming up this next weekend because you've like highlighted the best attributes of them. You're not like changing them. They are what they are. And so like when we're making wine, my goal is to like make the wine reflective of the vintage and time, but at the same time, try to use the resources and skills that we have to show it in its best light. So with the raisins this year, I don't feel like from the heat, we're able to like dance around those and ending up with wines that are gorgeous.
Did you go over the varietal composition of 17?
The 17 Black Label, I have no idea what the varietal composition is. That would have been cool if I looked that up. But head down to the vintage.
I can look it up real quick.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with like 99% Cabernet Sauvignon and 0.5% Petit Verdot and Malbec. Nah. Cab Franc.
Tom goes into the shared.
Give my secrets away.
I'll tell you what. Wine's not made by numbers, and so the blend percentage is like, as much as it's fun to like talk about them and like consider why it was that we did that. For the most part, like when I'm blending the wines, like it's not a formula. So like there's not. We end up eventually with those numbers after the blend. Then we'll like look at what barrels and which gallons went into the blend, and I'll be like, oh, this is Tom Carey. This is like what was in the blend. But it doesn't actually like. It's an artifact. It would be like having dinner. And then like ask, and then like this, then like how much of the percentage of the plate, like let's say you had a steak dinner and you also got the spinach and the peas and the potato, and then you're like, and you wanted to know the percentages of those different features that you had in your stomach later. And you'd be like, well, it didn't really matter because like it tasted fantastic. Yeah, and so
92% Cab Sauv, 4% Cab Franc, 2% Malbec, 2% Petit Verdot.
Okay, and I don't know if everybody.
I'm not sure if they cover that.
Okay, so Tom has looked it up. It's 94% Cabernet Sauvignon. 92% Cabernet Sauvignon, 4 Cab Franc, 2 Malbec, 2 Petit Verdot, and the Merlot, the fifth wheel of Bordeaux in this case, didn't make the cut. So in general, like when I'm blending those pieces together, the Cabernet Franc here, I think 4% is actually like a fairly high level of Cabernet Franc to include in Black Label. Historically, that's probably one of the heavier uses of Cab Franc in the Black Label. I'll have to look into that and do more of that. It's a winning combination. The Cab Franc tends to create some freshness elements, so it can work like a Merlot, but has more herbal and tertiary tones that can be complexing. And I can see that in this wine there are definitely, it's multi-layered. There's a lot going on. It does have a supple, dark and blue fruited richness and mid-palate weight and aromatic draw-in, but there are texturial elements that the art of knowing what you're tasting always helps. But there's some texturial, like, it's a young wine. There's some like cat paws or like some texture that's like dragging in the mid palate. That's not unpleasant, or it's not like that sounds horrible, but it's engaging and draws you into it. There's dimpled, it's like working to create space in the mid palate, and I think the Cab Franc's doing that. The herbal notes, tobacco leaf, some elements that are less not primary fruit, but are more. I think of them as like tertiary. They're the important aspect of the wine that's not fruit, let's say, or not fruit-derived esters. And then Malbec and Petit Verdot are Malbec's going to bring in like juicy fruit. It's probably like some of the violets and succulents and the aromatics are pumping out from the Malbec. That availability of the wine when it's young, Malbec is good at doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And Petit Verdot is going to bring in texture and structure and form rails in the wine that help move the wine through your palate and give it velocity and direction. So, but just like carving up anything, and like if you're watching a movie and you're like, oh, the key grip, like I don't know what the key grip does, but if you were like a professional person that had like worked on a movie set, you'd be like, ooh, and the camera pulled back from the actor, and then there's like a sudden pan to like the doorway, and if you like look at how it was made, you miss out on like kind of the beauty of seeing it with fresh eyes that don't see inside the sport. Ideally, wines, although they're different components here, and we do blend late. I age everything separately until I find what is obvious to me.
Mm-hmm.
Then we blend those pieces together. The wines are aged in glass after we bottle them, and the pieces married together after bottling. So, the individual components on their own do different aspects of them, and it's fun when they work out.
It worked out for this one.
Yeah.
Tommy, have any questions over there?
Oh, sure.
I guess my question I've been dying to ask you.
Yeah.
Did you know this is going to be 100
Yes. No, that's a hilarious question.
That's a classic question you get on a lot. I mean,
do you get that a lot, Carrie?
to be in a position to have a couple 100-point wines is pretty rare. And I feel like that's a question from the marketing PR side that we get a lot from writers, and
that's a funny question.
It's kind of like, to use an analogy, like when you're asking maybe a director, they know that was the Oscar-winning movie or the Oscar-winning wine. Did you know this?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's kind of funny when we had our first 100-point wine, the 2010 Fortuna Cab. I didn't even know there was. I knew that people got 100 points for their wines. But I didn't really think that there was anything specifically different from like 99 points or 100 points. To me, it seemed like those are both like incredible scores, and wouldn't that be such a lucky thing for someone to think your wine was perfect? That would be neat. It didn't really occur to me that was even like something possible or something that you did. When we were so lucky, when Robert Parker bestowed upon us the 100-point wine for the 2010 Fortuna Cab, it was amazing. It changed the future of Turnbull. It really did. It afforded us to hire awesome people like Tom and Carrie, and we didn't have like those skill sets before, so we're able to like in the front of the house, like we had little like Libby's glasses, and now we have like proper stemware. And when you come and visit, there's like a beautiful garden that's like taken care of by like an awesome organic gardener, and we have that new destemmer that takes out the raisins, and so there were like a whole bunch of stuff that happened because of that.
Yeah.
That made that all possible. And the great thing is, Mr. Odell put the generosity of that back into the winery to make it possible to continue to do those things. And so I guess it doesn't like, it no longer seems surprising to get 100 points on a wine. I guess I think like, yeah, it's a really great wine. And I think that this personally, I think that this wine is superior to the 2010 Fortuna Cab. So I think that our art, all the pieces that we put together, have helped us continuously move the bar higher and higher. And so, although I didn't, if I had to like say from the 2017, which wine would be the 100% wine, I wouldn't have picked Black Label.
What would you pick?
Yeah, I was preferential to the Leopoldina Cab.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
So
think
numbers right here.
I actually think that the 17 Leopoldina Cab is the better one.
Okay, so numbers, mark your calendars, summer
Summer 21.
21.
Really, it's not released yet.
We just released the 2016.
Oh.
Leo last in July.
What about the Franc?
That's a February, I think, release.
Oh,
Early.
We don't talk about that yet.
Really?
That's next year, yeah. We'll release
Early.
it.
my favorite wines from the 17 vintage were of course the Piera, the Leopoldina Cab, and the Cabernet Franc. I thought those were the three
So what I'm gonna do is
best ones. And actually the 17 Bon Vivant
that's awesome.
is also incredible.
We just released that. That one's you can buy that now. It's
I think those are my
Killer.
favorite four wines. Well, then the Manus and the Fortuna are pretty good too. It was a stacked set of wines that you, as members, and you've got these wines coming for the next like year or two. You're loving it because there's not a wine in the set that's like, wow, that's the dog. They're all super great. The Black Label, I think, is like kind of mid-pack. But
interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
you know, like just because it is our flagship, you know, like you know, Heart of Darkness. Doesn't mean it's the wine that I like would, if I could like grab any bottle and like take it to dinner, it's not always the Black Label.
Yeah.
Um,
That's fair.
and I think the diversity of all the wines is what makes them special.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really nice wine, and it should be. It is Black Label.
So let's end on this question. Kimberly wants to know, what does a 100-point celebration look like?
Oh, that's a good question.
A 100-point celebration. Well, I thought we had, you know, it was I think when we received the news.
I'm trying to think. That was maybe February.
Yeah,
or
it was
January?
pre-COVID, which was lovely.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
And we actually we gathered the entire staff together, and we had a toast to Antonio Belloni and Venice and Turnbull and the art of making wine, and we toasted ourselves with the wine.
We had a really good cheese and charcuterie spread.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
you know, it was a, you know, it was a glorious moment, and we got right back to work. I think we spent 20 minutes chatting and enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
And then there's work to get done. So you know, we don't take these things too seriously. I mean, it is fantastic when
Did you and Meg like a little toast when you got home, or?
I don't know. No, I think Meg is my wife, and I think she tries to like keep me from getting too big of a head. So
She brings you down to earth.
yeah,
She slept on the couch that night.
yeah, she was like, get back to work, you slave dog. No, I don't remember any like celebratory moment. I mean, it's been just like for everyone. It's been quite the year, and so I think it's a good question because we should be celebrating things and like when you find something to celebrate, this is the bottle to pop open for it. Or really, just any great bottle of wine will do. But I think wine's certainly one of those things to I don't know. We've been drinking a little bit. I think I'm getting less and less concerned about dying from the virus. Tom was laughing at me in March, but it's I do drink a little bit better out of my cellar than I used to. There's bottles that I probably wouldn't have had on a Tuesday that I have on a Tuesday,
Okay.
and so I find definitely special occasions easier. It doesn't take much to be a special occasion anymore. And I feel comfortable to like open up a bottle and enjoy that and savor that, and it helps kind of reset. So I think most of you are doing the same thing, and hopefully you are.
Yeah.
So if you've got a great bottle, pull the cork on it.
Enjoy it.
We'll make more.
Carrie, you want to let them know in the next.
Yes, so we are obviously tapering. We've tapered our live tastings because harvest is here. Peter doesn't sleep when there's harvest. It's busy actually for the whole team. It picks up in our tasting room. Believe it or not, we actually are open and people are coming in and tasting. We actually just saw some tasters walk by. So we are open for tastings. We're doing virtual tastings that you can book with us. There's more about that on our website. But we are doing another live tasting with Peter on November 5th. we're tasting the wines that you will be receiving in your wine club shipment. So you just, presuming that most of your members watching this, because this is a members only wine, you should have received an email from us on Monday, kind of announcing what's going out into your fall 2020 wine club shipment. I think it's a pretty stacked lineup. I'm not gonna, you guys will, I mean, you should have seen it if you read the email. If not, you'll be really happy when you open your box. But to celebrate that, we're gonna be tasting through the lineup of wines.
So we have a lot of wines to taste that
We
day.
do have a lot of wines to taste that
You're
day.
gonna have to keep me from talking so much.
We'll just race through it.
Tom's gonna be doing this thing behind the camera that's like, I'm gonna be gone.
I'm gonna pre-taste.
Oh, Tom, we got you. So you and me, and then open live mic.
Nice.
Just be drinking.
So that's on November 5th. There's details on our website about that, and we'll send a reminder email about that before the tasting. I'm trying to think what else is going on. We had a bunch of releases going out, so we've got a lot of new wines on
I
the
mean,
website.
holidays are coming up,
Holidays are coming out.
new holiday packs.
We have a lot of new holiday packs. There are a couple that we're really excited about. We're not going to say too much now, but you'll start to see those rolling out in early November. So holidays are here, whether or not we're ready for it or not. 2020 is thrown us for a loop, but we're still just going to celebrate the holidays. At least I am.
It was kind of
And,
amazing. Carrie made the tasting room look like Christmas the other day.
I did. We had a holiday photo shoot, and this whole room that we're in now is a different room, different scene. So that's coming up. We're gonna kind of just gently remind you that for your corporate and business gifting needs, we are a great resource for that. We have a lot of great options that can fit your budget. So that's me. That's my sales pitch.
It was a good one.
That's not a very good one, but that's kind of what's on the horizon.
I was interested. I was like, how can I get in on this?
Well, for all your corporate gifting needs, Peter,
Really? Yeah, perfect.
we've got wine for you.
Do you?
We have a wine for that.
Okay, good. And I saw they were actually packing up the gift packs
Yes.
in the barrel room, temperature safe.
Yes.
A lot more to go.
Yeah,
It's a lot
and
of packing.
it's an impressive activity, and
Yes.
and they look beautiful. So
We've got some good packs. So yes, with that, Peter, do you want a little toast to the camera, or?
well, I can't toast with an empty glass. I could pour myself, but it would be awkward. I'd be on my like third pour. But
The
why not?
other little pours. I mean,
The little pour, sure.
just a
447 somewhere.
Yeah.
Here.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining
Cheers.
us. Good to see you all again. We'll see you on November 5th, same time, same place.
Awesome. Thank
Cheers.
you. Mm,
I almost missed my mouth.
super good. After tasting fruit